Hello, Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Brian Clinton enthusiasts, Dad Life enthusiasts, people who are ready for the Owls to come to town.
Who?
Yeah,
I had to.
that was so good, but we didn't script that. This is another episode of the Oklahoma Drill, a podcast fueled by OU Insider and the Rivals Network. This is a special edition of the Oklahoma Drill because it is the first official pre-game podcast episode of the 2024 season. My name is Jesse Crittenden. I am joined as always by Brian Clinton. Brian, the 2024 season kicks off on Friday at 6 p.m. Owen Field under the lights. And the Owls will fly. Do they fly? Do owls fly? Yeah. Owls fly, right?
Yes, they do.
I'm thinking of chickens. Chickens don't fly.
Chickens can fly, just they're not long flight birds. Penguins don't fly. Ostriches,
Yeah.
ostri,
Do flamingi fly?
flamingi fly.
Is that the plural?
I don't think so.
Brian, how does it feel? How does it feel for it to be the season opener on Friday? This is crazy.
Nuts. Yeah, I mean, whirlwind, absolute whirlwind. Last month of this last month has just been nuts. And so hard to keep up with. But yeah, ready to get it going.
Owl. It's a great name. Temple Owls. Owls in a temple. We have so much to talk about, so much to break down. This has been a condensed week because OU is playing on a Friday evening for the first time at Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. And lots come out this week, actually including some news that came out just this morning on the weekly SEC coaches teleconference on Zoom. A couple of things that came out of that. And Brian, I think the first thing we should talk about is some news pertinent to OU season opener on Friday. That is Angelo Anthony will be available. Yep. And obviously that's humongous. Angelo Anthony obviously suffered an injury against Texas last season. He has not played since then. But potentially the bigger news for OU is that Nick Anderson will not be available for Friday's game against Temple. He's been day-to-day with injuries basically since the spring. I mean, honestly, he's dealt with some nagging stuff since the spring. He missed the spring game. He's been on the field for a lot of fall camp to some extent, but Brent Venables mentioned him as day-to-day on Sunday, and what do you know? He's not going to play. Obviously, OU is a massive favorite against Temple, but what does this mean for Oklahoma, for Nick Anderson to not play? And who does this – there's one name in particular, obviously, but who does this potentially pave the way for in Anderson's absence?
Well, I mean, getting Angelo Anthony on the field will be big, and obviously it's going to help with a guy a lot of people expect to be somewhere ahead of him being out as far as the depth chart goes. But yeah, I think this opens up a chance for guys like Jaquez Petaway, and some of the other guys that should cycle in. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about Brennan Thompson, a lot of talk about Deion Burks, and obviously Nick Anderson is one of the guys that's supposed to be kind of up there in that group of OU's best receivers. But for him to be down, I mean, OU's favored by 43, like you said. It's not this game is not something that Oklahoma should struggle with, and it really does kind of feel like an opportunity for you to give some of those guys rest. And if you expect Nick Anderson to be the kind of player that he's expected to be for Oklahoma this year, then it's probably better to let him sit out this game and make sure he's 100% as some of those bigger games on the horizon start to get closer.
Let me just say a couple of things because I've had a few people reach out to me about this. I don't think this is serious. It's not serious. If OU was playing Tennessee today, Nick Anderson would be on the field.
Yeah.
So, and I've had a couple people ask me, could he potentially miss the non-conference schedule and just kind of get him geared up for Tennessee? That would surprise me. I don't think anybody on that coaching staff is wanting Nick Anderson's first game of the season to be in OU's first game against an SEC opponent. I just don't think. Not only is that not the desire, but I don't think his injury necessitates that. I'd be surprised if he misses next week against Houston. But at the very least, wait, it's Houston, right?
Yeah.
God, my brain is, it's Houston, then Tulane. God, my brain is. It would surprise me if he were to miss next week against Houston. So I don't think his injuries are that, I don't think it's that much of a concern. I will say, and I don't want to speculate too much, but this would concern me a little in the sense that he missed a lot of the spring. He wasn't a full participant in the spring. And he was on the field to some extent during fall camp, but he hasn't been fully healthy in the fall either. And while, I think this is just the staff being cautious about him because they're going to kill Temple probably. It concerns me a little that he's still not fully healthy.
Yeah.
I think he's been banged up for a while. And I don't know the full extent of everything he's dealing with, but even if it is Temple, you would rather him play, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't know what that means. OU has the depth, obviously, but when you've already got Jaden Gibson on the shelf, it's just, you don't want guys still dealing with stuff. That's really my only concern.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's kind of it's one of those situations where obviously you want him to get as many reps as he can with this group, with this team, as many game reps as you can with Jackson Arnold as your starting quarterback. I mean, timing and repetition and all of that stuff in front of 80,000 people is going to be important. And so it's not like, this is a no loss situation for Anderson. But, at the same time, this is a guy that was able to stay healthy last year. Believe he had some injury issues early on in his career as well. No, his older brother certainly did from time to time. So hopefully this is what it takes to get him as close to 100% as possible. But it does give some of those younger guys an opportunity. So that's just kind of the way that things fall out right now. And you're almost pretty thankful that Emmett Jones has been able to stack that room the way that he has, because there are a lot of times where if you were entering the season with two of your top receiving threats out, it would be cause for panic. But it feels like OU has the pieces in place right now, at least to handle things against the likes of Temple or Houston potentially.
The good news is the guy that's going to start now, we know definitively for Nick Anderson, is actually the guy that was listed ahead of him or listed as a co-starter on the depth chart, and that's Brennan Thompson. And he's a guy that we will talk about in a little bit. So I'll say for now, unless something unexpected happens, OU starters at wide receiver are going to be Deion Burks, Shalil Farouk, and Brennan Thompson. Who saw that one coming 6 months ago? But that's testament to how much Brennan Thompson's gone up the depth chart. But like I said, we'll talk about him in just a little bit. As far as Angel Anthony, I would be surprised if he plays a ton. Look, he's medically cleared. He's available. I think that's positive. I do think he'll see the field. Don't think he's going to start, and I'd be pretty surprised if he plays a ton. Probably a few snaps just to get him back into a game type rhythm. But I think it's kind of like Nick Anderson. Like he's going to be available, but they're going to need him to be ready when the SEC schedule comes. But
Mhm.
how cool, right? For him, torn ACL,
Yeah.
for him to finally be back. It's gonna be kind of an emotional thing, I think, for a lot of people
Yeah.
when he.
Yeah, absolutely. The way that he had started last year, I mean, he was unquestionably the top receiving threat for Oklahoma going into that Texas game and was well on his way to being that again in that game before he went down. So I think it's a huge thing for him to get back on the field and be a part of that unit again. Um, and I agree with you. I think this is going to be one of those situations where you throw him out there, let him get comfortable again in a game setting, but ease him into it. I would not expect him to have snaps in 80% of the offensive snaps, or I don't expect him to be out there that much. So, but yes, good thing, big thing for him, and just kind of a testament to how seriously OU is taking the recovery and all of that. I mean, that's a testament to how good that recovery team is. To get him back after losing him in the middle of the season last year for the season opener, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
But I agree. But this is again why you say, yeah, it's great that OU has depth, and you know why it's great you have depth, because you can't predict injuries.
Right.
Nobody knew Jaden Gibson was going to miss the season before the year even started.
Yep.
And now, even if it's the coaching staff being cautious, you're still out one of your top three receivers
Yep.
for your season opener. So Angel Anthony coming back and being available is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's why you kind of have to assume, unfortunately, the injuries are part of the game and they're unpredictable. So Angel Anthony coming back is a big deal. Hard kid not to root for.
Yep.
Really hard kid not to root for. I think the other thing from this morning is, as everybody who's watching this probably knows by now, DeMarco Murray has been suspended for one game by the NCAA.
I'm just
Uh,
confused.
oh, you didn't know? Are you just
Yeah.
finding? Brent Venables made his first public comments on the situation today, and I'll just read a small part of one of those quotes, which is it's affirmation for slash. Despite all the education that you do, the constant monitoring and reinforcement of, hey man, just follow the rules. These are what they are. People can still make the mistakes. There's no doubt that I'm incredibly disappointed in what took place. I know our staff works to be mindful of the rules, and we have parameters, very clear, strong parameters that are in place. Unfortunately and completely unintentionally, that wasn't the case here. DeMarco knows all that. He's accepted responsibility. So I think incredibly disappointed is the key part of that quote. And then a couple other things that I thought was interesting. And the main one being that Brent Venables declined to say for sure if this is the game that DeMarco Murray is going to miss, which I was kind of wondering how much decision making, or like how much OU is in control of that process in terms of what game he misses. I think the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it's up in the air, it's not a given he's going to miss on Friday.
Yeah.
Um, Probably something to look more into, but obviously we'll be able to get to the game on Friday and see is DeMarco Murray on the sidelines.
Right.
But I would assume if he doesn't miss this, if OU has some control, then they would probably pick him to miss the main game in November.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting that it's not a given that he'll miss on Friday. And then I think the other part of it is, I don't know if we want to talk about everything that goes into these recruiting violations. He texted recruits and their families outside of a permitted time, and so that's why he's missing a game. I don't know if it's worth it to go into all the stuff because I've written about it. Parker and I talked about it yesterday on Quick
Yeah.
Slants. I know you haven't got a chance to talk about it. Is there anything about all this that
It's a nothing burger. I mean, these are just kind of this is one of those things where you your team essentially, I'm trying to think of your compliance team finds something, you self-report, Um, it's, hey, we did this wrong, and look, NCAA, we are self-governing. Don't feel like you need to come in and really hammer us on this. We've got this covered, and blah blah blah. I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. I think I could say with pretty pretty supreme confidence there are other things going on out there in other programs that far supersede the severity of what this is, and I think Oklahoma's just trying to handle this uh, with as much first class as they can, and so it makes sense. I get it, but yeah, it's really not that big of a deal.
This gets into that weird thing where like the NCAA is having less and less of a role in terms of the regulation of college football, but then
Yep.
something like this happens where it's not trying to excuse anything from DeMarco Murray or any of this. And Brent said, he's got to take responsibility. We've got to take responsibility. What are we doing here at this point, though? I
Right.
mean, in the NIL era and the transfer portal era, I mean, my goodness,
Yeah. I don't
there
know.
is so much stuff going on. I
If you're
mean,
seriously going to draw lines in the sand about times a coach can or can't contact players or their families, like that's what we're governing right now with everything else going on. That's where we're gonna hand out suspensions. Okay, like I don't know. Yeah, you'll get me on a soapbox. I'm too sleep deprived to really get angry about that, but it's annoying. It is that.
if anybody wants to hear, Parker and I talked about it on Quick Slants yesterday. I've written about it. Yeah, I mean, look, I would say this regardless of whose coaching staff it is. It's like, it's just, I think it's almost just a bigger testament to like how almost irrelevant the NCAA has become in regulating college football.
It's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah. Let's talk about more fun stuff. Let's talk about cooler stuff. And this was actually your idea, something that we're going to start doing during the season, which is going to be a stock up, stock down segment where we talk about maybe a couple players from the previous week or heading into a game whose stock is up, maybe a couple players whose stock is down. And for those players, they don't want to be on the stock down list because when we say their stock is down, I mean, how do you recover from that, Brian? I
You
don't think
don't.
you can.
You got to get on that stock up list the next week, or you're just shot into the sun, man.
Maybe we should add a redemption part to it
There
too,
you
like
go.
stock up, stock down, and then a
Yes,
redemption.
I like it.
Yeah. So OU hasn't played any games yet, so we don't necessarily have a stock down list right now, unless you want to throw Nick Anderson in there, which just feels cruel. He's already missing a game.
Don't kick the guy when he's down.
Yeah, he didn't do anything wrong. But we do have a few players that we could talk about as far as stock ups. So I'm going to hand the floor to you. This was your idea for a segment. That means if it bombs, it's your fault, and I take no responsibility for the segment. Brian, and one player, give me a player whose stock is up after a few weeks of fall camp heading into the season opener against Temple.
Brennan Thompson. It's just the easy, fast first answer. Like, get it out of the way. I think it kind of, for a lot of people, it comes out of left field, like it's myself included. Um, Not that I didn't have high expectations for him compared to last season because he just wasn't that involved last year. Um, but the plays that he was on the field and he was involved in were big. I mean, I think he led the team in yards per reception, if I remember right. But for him to be talked about the way that he is coming out of fall camp was surprising for me, and I'm extremely excited about that because one of the things that you can't scheme against is speed, and if you have Brennan Thompson and Deion Burks and Nick Anderson and like Jalil Farouk, Jaquez Pettit, like you have all of these guys that are just crazy fast out there. That bodes well. That bodes well for Oklahoma's offense. So if he truly lives up to the billing that we've kind of heard over the last several days, and some of the praise that he picked up from a head coach who's not quick to hand out praise, that's a big deal. So I think Brennan Thompson's the easy answer for me.
No, I agree, and I'll say a couple of things here. Brennan Thompson, I'll acknowledge he's been under my radar for the last several months. I mean, wasn't really a guy talked about in the spring, and I've mentioned him when I've talked about the receiver room, but I think
Mhm.
when you talk about the receiver room,
He's probably
like,
fifth or sixth on that list coming into fall camp.
yeah.
Easy.
Um, I talked about this with Parker on Quick Slants. Standing next to him when we got to talk to him on Monday, the difference from last year to this year in terms of his size is staggering. Like I would say top five, he's in the top five of players who look the most different from last year to this year.
Wow.
I would have said last year he looked like a track athlete.
Yes.
And I think I said frail on quick slants. I wish I hadn't said frail because he didn't look frail. He didn't look frail. No D1 college athlete looks frail. Especially not any athletes at OU. But what I meant to say is like he looked small. He doesn't look small anymore. And he talked about that on Monday, how much adding bulk was important to him. And I was even still skeptical, even when he was listed at the top of the depth chart as a co-starter on
Hmm.
Sunday. Now, I had heard some buzz that he had looked really good in fall camp, but again, fall camp, it's like everybody looks good. Nobody looks bad in fall camp. Everybody looks good. But and I do think part of why he was listed as a co-starter is because I think the coaching staff knew it was likely that Nick Anderson wasn't going to play. But Brent Venables went out of his way to praise Brennan Thompson and said he's developed his route tree. He's not just a speedster down the field. That's been something that he's worked on, is being more than that. And I'll just say this. I don't know how many snaps he's going to play. I know he'll play more than the 30 he played last year. But if he's actually a guy, he doesn't have to be a 60 snap a game guy. That's not what he doesn't have to be that. He doesn't even have to be a starter. But if he can be a guy that plays even 15 to 20 snaps a game, that's huge. And that's just I don't want to say cherry on top, but it's like that's just an added bonus to this wide receiver room. And I think he can do that. I think he can play 15 to 20 snaps a game. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe he plays more than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see it. And it's kind of the situation as well. It almost feels as if, I mean, those are it's two totally different body types, right? Like what you lose in Jaden Gibson, what you pick up in Brennan Thompson is two totally different body types. But I think it would be foolish to say that with Gibson going down that Brennan Thompson didn't absolutely take the opportunity and run with it. Like because it does open up a spot out there for somebody that needs to fill the void, and it sounds like that's exactly what he did. So it moves some things around, and I'm excited to see kind of how those guys play out. I really, especially after last year, about how much emphasis uh, we placed on how big the gap was between the top three or four names and the rest of the wide receiver room. I am interested to see how that plays out this year. Um, so yeah, good point.
My first player, and it's an obvious candidate, and that's Jaden Jackson. Um, a guy that I think we were both high on heading into the spring. That the buzz on him was incredible, not only just for a freshman, but it became clear pretty quick that he was going to play and play a lot. And I think even we talked about him a couple of weeks ago, and I think we both took the over on 500 or more snaps combined for Jaden Jackson and David Stone. I'm going to give you credit because I think you said you were predicting that Jaden Jackson would start a game this season. Who would have thought it would be the season opener? He's starting the season opener as a true freshman. First true freshman to start on the defensive interior line for OU since Tommy Harris. And I mean, if that says something, I mean, good Lord. I mean, he has the body. He doesn't look like a true freshman. He looks like a veteran already. But I knew he was going to play a lot regardless. But for him to get the start over, I mean, OU doesn't have they don't have 9 seniors vying for time on the interior, but true freshmen. I mean, PJ Adibawara and Peyton Bowen were the only 2 freshmen to play every game last season on defense. Yeah. For him to not only earn the role to play a lot, but to start, that says something about him, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For him to not only supplant Grayson Halton for that spot, which he had a great spring and summer by his own account. That says a lot. And I mean, look no further than the fact David Stone, who really was the crown jewel of this last recruiting class, he's listed 3rd on that list. Now, again, I think we've all had the conversation ad nauseum about how high his ceiling is and what we expect him to be at some point. But Jaden Jackson is the starter at defensive tackle. There's not an or next to his name between he and Grayson Halton. It's Jaden Jackson 1 right there up the top of the list. So I think that speaks volumes by itself. And what I really like about that is this is a guy, as you said, he's already 300 plus. This is already a guy that has a body type to be a difference maker for Oklahoma, be an anchor for Oklahoma. But we saw him do some of that in the spring game too, where he really demanded double teams and he was able to anchor himself and keep forward progress from happening there with offensive linemen. So I like it. I really like where he's at. And for him to be named the starter, stock up definitely. I got another one.
Throw it at me.
Michael Tarquin at left tackle.
I love it. Love the pick.
I'm surprised. I think we've had the discussion before, and I even know for a fact that we went as far as to say there would be more likely than not there would be a surprise from Bill Bedenbaugh coming out of spring or out of fall, because that's kind of what he does. Like it's the best 5, regardless of who those 5 are and where they're at. He wants the best 5 out there, and right now they feel like Tarquin at tackle and Jacob Sexton at left guard gives them the best 5 that they can be. Now, I think Brandon is who I heard kind of use this metaphor or use this comparison the other day, and I have to give him credit for that. But I think if you get the Florida version of Michael Tarquin at Oklahoma this year, that offensive line is pretty good. That's a pretty good group, and I think that's what this group feels like they're getting is the better version of him. And so if that's the case, I think you got to feel pretty good about that. And I have to say, for all of the flack, for all of the comments that were made whenever he was brought in, I think it's just a testament to not just his work ethic, but Bill Bedenbaugh's not going to put a guy out there that is going to tarnish the reputation that he has. And it's not for a fact that he doesn't want his reputation tarnished. It's just you have to be technically sound. You have to know what you're doing to play for Bill Bedenbaugh. That's why true freshmen don't play for him very often. So it's a testament to both he and Tarquin. And I'm excited to see what it looks like, because if he's solid there at left tackle, this group all of a sudden looks pretty good.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's a little bit of surprise. I think it started to trend that way towards the end of fall camp, that they really liked Sexton and Tarquin together on that side of the line. I do think Jacob Sexton is better at left tackle or more of a natural tackle, but I think it's clear that they are confident he can play guard and that they like him and Tarquin together.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. And look, if Tarquin solidified himself at that spot, which he has, that I mean, he's experienced. He's one of the most experienced guys on the line. Bodes well for them.
Yep.
I'll have a couple. I have two that are going to tie for my other stock up options, and I'm only going to talk about one of them in depth right now. And that tie would be Javante Barnes and Kendall Dolby.
Mm.
We're going to talk about Barnes in just a minute, but I'll say for Dolby's perspective, it's been clear for a while that he's going to be the starting cheetah. And I think Omasigo and Reggie Powers behind him. I think it's been that way for a while. Really good group. But for there to not be an or next to Dolby, for it to be clear that he's the guy at Cheetah, I asked Brent Venables about Dolby on Monday in Monday's press conference, and Brent said, man, it was such a good answer. My two favorite things is he said he's one of the most competitive people I've ever been around. That's one. And two, he said, even though Dolby's listed at 5'11", 190, I think, he said he sees himself as a 6'2", 225. That's how he plays.
Love that.
And I just love that. So Dolby finished in the top 10 in snaps last season. If he's healthy, he's going to do that again this year.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a couple people mention to me, oh, McCullough's not at the depth chart at Cheetah. McCullough moved pretty full time to linebacker or, to that Will spot a while ago. He's hurt, I don't know if McCullough's going to play on Friday.
Yeah. I'd be surprised. I would be surprised if he did. I think where you see him on the depth chart right now is probably indicative of how much we see him. I think some of that has to do with his with where he is right now health wise. So
I agree. Let's talk about Temple, or more specifically, let's talk about some things that we're watching from that Temple game. We will do a lot of in-depth breakdowns on teams moving forward. No disrespect to Temple. They were 3-9 last year. They added a couple of guys in the transfer portal, but they went 3-9. They still haven't named a starting quarterback, as far as I know, heading into Friday. OU's a 43-point favorite. You're not going to overlook any opponent, but this is a tune-up game for Oklahoma for all intents and purposes. Friday night game, 6 p.m. Pretty crazy that we're getting a Friday night season opener. Look, Temple's an FBS team, but kind of in name only. Sorry, Temple. Would expect OU to be to score early and often. Wouldn't expect the defense to have a ton of problems. If the defense has problems, if either side of the ball has problems, that would be something to monitor. I'd expect OU to be able to go pretty reserve heavy in the second half of this one. But don't want to assume anything. Upsets happen. They do. Would be shocked if that happened on Friday. So instead of doing a really big breakdown on Temple, let's talk about a couple of things that you and I are going to be watching for from the Oklahoma perspective. So I'm going to give you, I love drafts. So I'm going to give you first pick for things to watch. Tell me what you're looking for.
Clean, efficient game from the offense is my number one thing. So I kind of broke that down. No turnover-worthy throws from Jackson Arnold. I want to see him take care of the football. There is a fine line between trusting your guy and putting the ball in harm's way, and he's going to have to find that this year if he's going to live up to the expectations placed on him. No offensive line confusion. I think you're going to see a lot of vanilla. Like I would expect this to be probably, well, I'll say this. By the time Maine comes to town, you will have already put so much of your playbook out there that you're probably not going to hurt a whole lot by showing some things there that you've already shown if you need to work on it. I don't expect there to be a lot shown. Like this is probably going to be the most bland game that you see Oklahoma call all year, I would imagine. So I would really hope there's not a lot of confusion on the offensive line. So that would be my other thing. And then the other one is big plays from the run game. Clean and efficient. I think Oklahoma, if it's going to be the team that it wants to be in the SEC this year, it needs to be able to play bully ball here in these situations. It needs to be able to run the ball and run it efficiently and effectively, and pretty much just churn out as many yards as they want. Um, that's really what needs to happen for this team. Because again, no disrespect to Temple, they're picked to finish 14th out of 14 teams in the American Conference. Um, they're just not a good ball team right now. They weren't last year. I probably shouldn't say they're not a good ball team right now. We don't know that for a fact because we haven't seen them play yet. But there was so much turnover on the roster from last year. It's almost pointless to try and go look through what we saw from them last year because there's just so many new faces. And um, you know, continuity is a big thing in football. So I would expect Oklahoma to have its way offensively. I just want it to be a clean, efficient game. If I'm a Sooner fan, that's really what you're looking for.
I just had a random thought because you did the owl noise at the beginning of the podcast. You said you did who? You did that. I don't know if you or anybody out there has ever watched Brian Regan stand up.
Mm-mm.
He's amazing. Also the goofiest stand up comedian you'll ever see. But I remember he was doing a whole thing about animal noises. And he said, when did we start saying that owls say hoot? Have you ever heard an owl make the T sound? They go who, not who. That's the extent of my thoughts on Temple.
I like it.
No, I like what you said, and to go along with what you said about the running game, one of the things that I'm going to watch is what is that split between Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes? I thought it was pretty interesting that they were listed as co-starters, that there was an or there. But it drives with Javante Barnes. He's been a popular, on the team, he's been a popular guy to watch. A guy who struggled last season. I think he played like 90 snaps last year. Didn't play in a lot of games. And not only is he fully recovered, Brent Venables lauded him. He spoke in front of the team before fall camp started. Javante Barnes did. But them being listed as co-starters is pretty interesting to me because despite all of that, I still saw Gavin Sawchuk and still see him as the leader of this backfield. But the fact that there's an or there, I don't know how much stock to put into that other than I'm curious, a year ago, we saw this as Javante Barnes' backfield with Sawchuk as the number 2 / change of pace guy. Is that the case this year? Or could this be a 50-50? Could this be a 60-40? Does Barnes have a chance to leap Gavin Sawchuk in the depth chart? I don't know. And I'm not saying we're going to learn the answer to those questions in this game, but in the first half in particular, I would assume Sawchuk will come out first. But in the first half in particular, I'm curious to see how much they both carry the ball and how much they're both on the field.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in a perfect world, just to add to that, if you could have it, if everything was perfect for the backfield, Javante Barnes, when you get to the SEC schedule, is your first and second down back, and Gavin Sawchuk is your third down guy. Like that's your guy who's a receiving threat out of the backfield. Now, short yardage situation, obviously, you're going to want somebody like Barnes in there, but he has the body type and the physicality to be that downhill turner that you see in the SEC and in physical games like that. So yeah, if he is able to recapture the excitement that was placed on him post Florida State, in the Cheez-It Bowl. Um, yeah, that backfield takes a major leap forward in its expectations. So I like that.
No, I would agree. And just to reiterate, I wouldn't put a ton of stock really at any position group for this game. I mean, I
Yeah.
think Tatum will see carries, Caleb Hicks will see carries, Sam Franklin will see carries,
I
but
think Tatum might be the person I'm most excited to see carry the football,
yeah,
um, for what it's worth.
no, I agree. But also Sam Franklin listed at third on the depth chart.
Yep.
But in the first half, I mean, I would be surprised if any of the running backs see more than 10 carries,
Hmm.
maybe 12. But curious to see what that split is like. So that's going to be one thing I'm watching. Do you have another thing you're going to be watching?
Yes. This is again, this is just one of those games where you're really looking for you're really looking for them to be effective, I guess. Like you don't want there to be any procedural issues. And so one of the things I'm looking for specifically on special teams is for them just to be special. Just be special on special teams. Like that it's this is a game where there should be such a wide gap in talent, um, that the game should really never be in question. However, for Oklahoma, one of the things that needs to happen for this team, for them to reach their expectations this year, is special teams cannot be an issue. It has to be something that they feel confident in. And so, no kicking game errors. I've got no big plays allowed in the return game, but also having big plays in the return game. No procedural issues, no false starts, no issues with the punt team, no issue. I mean, we saw last year a couple times, 10 guys out there and they're running the 11th guy out there. Like you can't have those things. And with as much attention to detail as the staff places on each and everything that they do, I would expect that to be better this year. But you know, I want to see what Tyler Keltner looks like as the starter. Um, I want to see what Peyton Bowen and Billy Bowman are able to do in the return game. So I'm excited about that. I do think it's interesting, um, that Keltner is the starter listed at kicker and Schmidt is the listed starter at kickoff, which is something I kind of alluded to last week. I didn't mean to uh, predict that, but that is in a lot of situations, um, if that's how it works out and you have one guy that can focus, like it sounds rudimentary, but if you can have one guy focus on kicking the ball really hard and
Yeah.
running up to it, if you can have one guy be the place kicker and one, if it just continuity and practice really helps. So if that works out and they're able to do that, you got to feel pretty good about where the kicking game could be versus where it was last year. And then obviously, if Luke Elzinga can be the guy he was to finish last year, for a full season, I mean, oh, you might have one of the better punters in the SEC. Like he was very impressive to finish the year. So um, we'll see what it looks like, but yeah, you got to be special in special teams.
I'm so excited to watch Peyton Bowen return
I am
punts.
too.
God, I'm so excited. I understand some of the fans that have a little bit of concern about injury risk and whatever, but I honestly agreed full heartedly with what Brent said on Monday, which is, hey, you can get hurt anytime you're on the field,
Yep.
regardless of what you
You
do.
get hurt
And
walking to class.
so, God, I'm so excited to like not only a guy that can do it and has excelled at doing it, but wants to do it. Like he
Right.
wants to be the punt returner.
Yep. That's
Um,
big.
yeah,
That I mean, mindset on that kind of stuff is huge. Like
he
there's a
said
lot of,
that he wants to be in special teams.
yeah, like some guys see that as a, oh man, like, but no, that's big. That's a good thing.
I'll throw the other main thing that I'm going to watch is just the defensive line in general, specifically how the snap counts shake out in the first half. We got some clarity. We talked about Jaden Jackson getting the start. It'll be Dominic Williams next to him on the interior. At your starting DNs, it's Ethan Downs and R. Mason Thomas. Is the R. Mason Thomas breakout year Is it here? I think it could be. If he's healthy, look, Brent Venables said it last year. He was the best DN in fall camp. He just couldn't stay healthy last year. There's no or next to R. Mason Thomas. He is the starter at defensive end next to Ethan Downs. I'm just curious because, again, not that you're going to be able to put a ton of stock into snap counts and all that. They're going to be able to play a bunch of guys if everything goes like we assume it will. But I'm really curious about both the interior and the DN spots because the interior, I mean, look, 5 different guys logged at least 300 snaps last year. Heavy rotation there. I think there could be an even bigger rotation at DN this year because not only is it R. Mason Thomas and Ethan Downs, it's Caden Woolard, it's PJ Adibawara, it's Trace Ford, it's Taylor Wine, it's Danny Okoye. A lot of guys there, and I think, and Brent said if everything was perfect, they could play 9 to 12 guys on the D line. So in the first half, I'm curious to see which guys play, how much they play, and also the combinations of guys together. Because if I had to say a combination that I'm most excited about, it's R. Mason Thomas and PJ Adibawara on the defense.
Yeah.
Or Downs wreaking havoc on quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So I do think in the first half we could get a slight glimpse into, hey, where does David Stone factor into the rotation? Where does Grayson Halton factor into the rotation? How much does PJ play? Like all kinds of stuff kind of thrown into that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm watching.
Yeah.
Anything to add? What's another thing you've got to watch?
Yeah, my third one was just utter dominance on the defensive side of the ball is really what you need to see. Again, the talent gap is just going to be huge. And that's what you expect. I mean, the spread again is 43 points. So I have in particular, it's going to be vanilla on defense, just like it is on offense. There's not going to be a whole lot of things shown. You're going to see a lot of just base lining up and reading your key. I don't expect there to be just like a ton of different blitz packages or anything shown. There shouldn't have to be. And if that's the case, I really want to see this side of the ball. When I say dominance, there should be little to no instances where whoever starts at quarterback for Temple should have the opportunity to stand back there and throw the football. The one thing we've harped on this over and over again, the one thing that this team needs on the defensive side of the ball to become elite is somebody that is in the quarterback's face on every play, just about. Every time he's out there on the field, they have to worry about double teaming him, keeping a running back in to help chip. There are guys there now, like you said, if R. Mason Thomas can be that guy, if PJ can be that guy, if Woolard can be that guy, that's huge. I do like the prospect of seeing what Danny Okoye is able to bring to this group. Like, with him being a Tulsa guy, I'm already rooting for the guy. Love the kid, but just to get an opportunity to see him really turn it loose. The dude's a freak. So if he can be one of those guys that kind of helps bring that edge on third down, really, really excited to see what they can bring on the edge, because this is a game where you should be able to turn things loose without having to show a lot. And you need to see that from this group. This is one of those stat games. It sounds bad, but this is a stat game for the defensive side of the ball. So it needs to be that.
Breaking news. Brian Clinton only cares about stats. He thinks players should only care about stats. That's the headline. Holy cow. We are a little over 48 hours from kickoff. Just nuts. From a huge 2024 season, OU's first season in the SEC, a Friday night game to open the season. Just holy cow. The next few months are going to be absolutely bonkers, but there's no better place for anybody out there. I think I can speak for Brian. I think I could speak for you and I. No better place out there for anybody to go than OU Insider. Head on over to OUinsider.com, become a VIP member today. Make sure to like and subscribe to the OU Insider YouTube channel. We're going to have so much content throughout the season, every day of the season, both here on the YouTube channel and over at OUinsider.com. We will be there on Friday for OU's game. We will be in the press box. We'll be on the field. We'll have all kinds of post-game coverage. Plenty of stuff that you guys aren't going to want to miss. All of our analysis, all of our breakdowns, videos from players, quotes from coaches and players, just all kinds of stuff you're not going to want to miss. No better time to sign up than right now. We will see you guys next week to break it all down and break down the first game of the 2024 season. Just absolutely nuts that it's here. Till then, we'll see you guys next time.
Woo.